Introduction. On the final day of his sophomore year of high school, the author was hit in the face with a baseball bat. This left him with a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, and 2 shattered eye sockets. He was first carried to a local hospital, but was later moved to a different hospital for surgery due to the severity of the injury. After the surgery, he returned home with a broken nose, half a dozen facial fractures, and a bulging left eye. The months following the surgery were hard. It felt like everything in his life was on hold. He literally couldn't even see straight. Between the seizures and his vision problems, it was 8 months before he could even drive a car again. Baseball had always been a major part of his life. His dad had played minor league baseball, and he had a dream of playing professionally too. After months of rehabilitation, what he wanted more than anything was to get back on the field. But his return to baseball was not smooth. He was the only junior to be cut from the varsity baseball team. He was sent down to play with the sophomores on junior varsity. For someone who had spent so much time and effort on the sport, getting cut was humiliating. After a year of self-doubt, he managed to make the varsity team as a senior, but he rarely made it on the field. Despite his lackluster high school career, he still believed he could become a great player. To do this, he had to come up with a plan for constant improvement. But the turning point came 2 years after the injury, when he began college. It was college he would discover the surprising power of small habits for the first time. As he explained, attending that particular college was one of the best decisions of my life. He earned a spot on the baseball team, and although he was at the bottom of the roster as a freshman, he was thrilled. He wasn't going to be starting on the baseball team anytime soon, so he focused on getting his life in order. While his peers stayed up late and played video games, he built good sleep habits and went to bed early each night. These improvements were minor, but they gave him a sense of control over his life. As each semester passed, he gathered small but consistent habits that ultimately led to results that were unimaginable to him when he started. When his sophomore season arrived, he earned a starting role on the pitching staff. By junior year, he was voted team captain, and at the end of the season, he was picked for the all-conference team. But it was not until his senior season that his sleep, study, and strength training habits really began to pay off. 6 years after he had been hit in the face with a baseball bat, he was selected as the top male athlete at his college. By the time he graduated, he was listed in the school record books in 8 different categories. That same year, he was awarded the university's highest academic honor, the President's Medal. As he wrote, "Changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years." How and why the book was written? In November 2012, the author began publishing articles at jamesclear.com. Prior to this time, he had been keeping notes about his personal experiments with habits. He decided it was time to share it with the public. He began by publishing a new article every Monday and Thursday. Within a few months, this simple writing habit led to his first 1,000 email subscribers. In 2015, he reached 200,000 email subscribers and signed a book deal with a publishing house to begin writing this book. As his audience grew, so did his business opportunities. He began to get invited to speak at top organizations, and his articles started appearing on major publications. Here's how the book will benefit you. In the book, the author shows step-by-step plan for building better habits. Not for days or weeks, but for a lifetime. The ideas in the book are drawn from the fields of biology, neuroscience, philosophy, and psychology. The backbone of the book is the author's 4-step model of habits: cue, craving, response, and reward, and the 4 laws of behavior change that evolve out of these steps. The strategies the book covers will be relevant to anyone looking to improve their health, money, productivity, and relationships. The fundamentals. Why tiny changes make a big difference. Chapter 1. The surprising power of atomic habits. The British cycling team for over 100 years didn't win a single trophy at cycling's biggest race, the Tour de France. Then Britain hired Dave Brailsford as the team's new performance director, and that's when everything changed. What made Dave different from previous coaches was his relentless commitment to a strategy. He called it the aggregation of marginal gains. The idea was to search for a tiny margin of improvement in everything you do. Dave began by leading the team to make small adjustments you might expect from a professional cycling team. Things like redesigning the bike seats to make them more comfortable or rubbing alcohol on the tires for a better grip. As these improvements accumulated, the results came faster than anyone expected. Just 5 years after Brailsford took over, The British cycling team dominated the road and track cycling events at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, where they won an astounding 60% of the gold medals available. Why do small improvements accumulate into such remarkable results? And how can you replicate this approach in your own life? Why small habits make a big difference? It is very easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. As he explained, too often, we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't particularly notable. Sometimes it isn't even noticeable, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. For example, if you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, you'll decline nearly down to zero. What starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something big. As he wrote, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. We often dismiss small changes because they don't seem to matter very much in the moment. But success or failure is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. As he explained, good habits will make time your ally. Bad habits will make time your enemy. That's why habits are a double-edged sword. What progress is really like. Breakthrough moments are often the result of many previous actions, which build up the potential required to unleash a major change. For example, cancer spends 80% of its life undetectable, then takes over the body in months. Similarly, habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold and unlock a new level of performance. In the early and middle stages of any quest, there is often what the author calls a valley of disappointment. At first, it doesn't feel like you are making any progress. As he explained, it's a hallmark of any compounding process. The most powerful outcomes are delayed. To make a meaningful difference, habits need to persist long enough to break through this plateau, what he calls the plateau of latent potential. When you're putting in the work and not seeing any results, your work is not wasted. It is just being stored. All the action happens when you cross the plateau of latent potential. And when you finally break through the plateau of latent potential, people will call it an overnight success. As he wrote, change can take years before it happens all at once. The plateau of latent potential. All big things come from small beginnings. The seed of every habit is a single, tiny decision. But as that decision is repeated, a habit sprouts and grows stronger. But what determines whether we stick with a habit long enough to survive the plateau of latent potential and break through to the other side? What is it that causes some people to slide into unwanted habits and enables others to enjoy the compounding effects of good ones? Forget about goals, focus on systems. Conventional wisdom teaches that the best way to achieve what we want in life is to set goals. As he wrote, I realized that my results had very little to do with the goals I set and nearly everything to do with the systems I followed. What's the difference between systems and goals? Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. If you want better results, forget about setting goals. Focus on your system instead. Goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. A handful of problems arise when you spend too much time thinking about your goals and not enough time designing your systems. 1. Winners and losers have the same goals. If successful and unsuccessful people share the same goals, then the goal cannot be what differentiates the winners from the losers. It wasn't the goal of winning the Tour de France that propelled the British cyclists to the top of the sport. It was only when they implemented a system of continuous small improvements that they achieved a different outcome. 2. Achieving a goal is only a momentary change. Achieving a goal only changes your life for the moment. That's the counterintuitive thing about improvement. We think we need to change our results, but the results are not the problem. What we really need to change are the systems that cause those results. As he wrote, fix the inputs and the outputs will fix themselves. 3. Goals restrict your happiness. The problem with a goals-first mentality is that you're continually putting happiness off until the next milestone. Goals create an either-or conflict. Either you achieve your goal and are successful, or you fail and you are a disappointment. You mentally box yourself into a narrow version of happiness. But with a systems-first mentality, you have the antidote. You can be satisfied anytime your system is running. And a system can be successful in many different forms, not just the one you first envision. 4. Goals are at odds with long-term progress. When all of your hard work is focused on a particular goal, what is left to push you forward after you achieve it? This is why many people find themselves reverting to their old habits after accomplishing a goal. The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. A system of atomic habits. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. As he explained, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Focusing on the overall system, rather than a single goal, is one of the core themes of the book. This is the meaning of the phrase atomic habits, a regular practice or routine that is not only small and easy to do, but also the source of incredible power, a component of the system of compound growth. Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity, and vice versa. Why is it so easy to repeat bad habits and so hard to form good ones? Changing our habits is challenging for 2 reasons. 1. We try to change the wrong thing. 2. We try to change our habits in the wrong way. In this chapter, the author addresses the first point. In the chapters that follow, he answered the second. The mistake we make when trying to change our habits is that we try to change the wrong thing. The author outlined 3 levels at which change can occur. You can imagine them like the layers of an onion. 3 layers of behavior change. The first layer is changing your outcomes. This level is concerned with changing your results, losing weight, or publishing a book. Most of the goals you set are associated with this level of change. The second layer is changing your process. This level is concerned with changing your habits and systems. For example, implementing a new routine at the gym. Most of the habits you build are associated with this level. The third and deepest layer is changing your identity. This level is concerned with changing your beliefs, your worldview, your self-image, your judgments about yourself and others. Most of the beliefs, assumptions, and biases you hold are associated with this level. When it comes to building habits that last, the problem is not that one level is better or worse than another. As he explained, all levels of change are useful in their own way. The problem is the direction of change. Most people begin the process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. This leads us to outcome-based habits. The alternative is to build identity-based habits. With this approach, we start by focusing on who we wish to become. Most people don't even consider identity change when they set out to improve. They just think, I want to be skinny, outcome, and if it's stick to this diet, then I'll be skinny, process. They set goals and determine the actions they should take to achieve those goals without considering the beliefs that drive their actions. They never shift the way they look at themselves, and they don't realize that their old identity can sabotage their new plans for change. Behind every system of actions is a system of beliefs. Behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. You may want more money, but if your identity is someone who consumes rather than creates, then you'll continue to be pulled towards spending rather than earning. It's hard to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. The ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. It's one thing to say I'm the type of person who wants this. It's something very different to say I'm the type of person who is this. The more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will be to maintain the habits associated with it. If you're proud of the size of your biceps, you'll make sure you never skip workout. Once your pride gets involved, you'll fight tooth and nail to maintain your habits. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of your identity. True behavior change is identity change. Improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are. For example, the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. Your behaviors are usually a reflection of your identity. What you do is an indication of the type of person you believe that you are, either consciously or non-consciously. You will always act like the type of person you already believe yourself to be. Like all aspects of habit formation, this too is a double-edged sword. When working for you, identity change can be a powerful force for self-improvement. When working against you, though, identity change can be a curse. The more deeply a thought or action is tied to your identity, the more difficult it is to change it. The biggest barrier to positive change, at any level, individual, team, society, is identity conflict. Good habits can make rational sense, but if they conflict with your identity, you will fail to put them into action. You may struggle with your habits because you're too busy. But over the long run, however, the real reason you fail to stick with habits is that your self-image gets in the way. This is why you can't get too attached to one version of your identity. Progress requires unlearning. Becoming the best version of yourself requires you to continuously edit your beliefs and to upgrade and expand your identity. How, exactly, is your identity formed? There's a two-step process to changing your identity. Your identity emerges out of your habits. You are not born with preset beliefs. Every belief, including those about yourself, is learned and conditioned through experience. Your habits are how you embody your identity. When you write each day, you embody the identity of a creative person. The more you repeat a behavior, the more you reinforce the identity associated with that behavior. Whatever your identity is right now, you only believe it because you have proof of it. If you go to church every Sunday for 20 years, you have evidence that you are religious. The more evidence you have for a belief, the more strongly you will believe it. Your habits are not the only actions that influence your identity, but by virtue of their frequency, they are usually the most important ones. The effect of one-off experiences tends to fade away, while the effect of habits gets reinforced with time, which means your habits contribute most of the evidence that shapes your identity. Small habits can make a meaningful difference by providing evidence of a new identity. Habits are the path to changing your identity. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. It is a simple two-step process. 1. Decide the type of person you want to be. 2. Prove it to yourself with small wins. First, decide who you want to be. Start there and work backward from the results you want to the type of person who could get those results. Once you have a handle on the type of person you want to be, you can begin taking small steps to reinforce your desired identity. The concept of identity-based habits is the first introduction to another key theme in this book: feedback loops. Your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes your habits. It's a two-way street. The formation of all habits is a feedback loop, the real reason habits matter. The remainder of this book will provide you with a step-by-step guide on how to build better habits. Your habits are the channel through which you develop your deepest beliefs about yourself. You will always become your habits. Chapter 3. How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. In the late 1890s, the psychologist Edward Thorndike carried out an experiment using cats. He was interested in studying the behavior of animals, and he started with cats. He studied the behavior of cats when they were presented with an obstacle and given a reward whenever they made a progress towards overcoming the obstacle. As Thorndike wrote, behaviors followed by satisfying consequences tend to be repeated, and those that produce unpleasant consequences are less likely to be repeated. His work provides the perfect starting point for discussing how habits form in our own lives. Why your brain builds habits. The process of habit formation begins with trial and error. Whenever you encounter a new situation in life, your brain has to make a decision. You are carefully analyzing the situation and making conscious decisions about how to act. You're taking in tons of new information and trying to make sense of it all. The brain is busy learning the most effective course of action. After you stumble upon an unexpected reward, you alter your strategy for next time. Your brain immediately begins to catalog the events that preceded the reward. This is the feedback loop behind all human behavior. Try, fail, learn, try differently. With practice, the useless movements fade away and the useful actions get reinforced. Whenever you face a problem repeatedly, your brain begins to automate the process of solving it. Your habits are just a series of automatic solutions that solve the problems and stresses you face regularly. As habits are created, the level of activity in the brain decreases. A choice that once required effort is now automatic. A habit has been created. Habits is just a memory of the steps you previously followed to solve a problem in the past. Habits reduce cognitive load and free up mental capacity, so you can allocate your attention to other tasks. Will habits make my life dull? Do so much routine take away the vibrancy and spontaneity of life? Habits do not restrict freedom. they create it. In fact, the people who don't have their habits handled are often the ones with the least amount of freedom. If you're always being forced to make decisions about simple tasks, you will have less time for freedom. Building habits in the present allows you to do more of what you want in the future. The science of how habits work. The process of building a habit can be divided into 4 simple steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. This 4-step pattern is the backbone of every habit, and your brain runs through these steps in the same order each time. First, there is the cue. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It is a bit of information that predicts a reward. Your mind is continuously analyzing your internal and external environment for hints of where rewards are located. Because the cue is the first indication that we're close to a reward, it naturally leads to a craving. Cravings are the second step, and they are the motivational force behind every habit. Without some level of motivation or desire, without craving a change, we have no reason to act. Every craving is linked to a desire to change your internal state. Cues are meaningless until they are interpreted. The third step is the response. The response is the actual habit you perform, which can take the form of a thought or an action. Whether a response occurs depends on how motivated you are and how much friction is associated with the behavior. Finally, the response delivers a reward. Rewards are the end goal of every habit. The cue is about noticing the reward. The craving is about wanting the reward. The response is about obtaining the reward. We chase rewards because they serve 2 purposes. Firstly, they satisfy us and teach us. Secondly, rewards teach us which actions are worth remembering in the future. Our brain is a reward detector. Rewards close the feedback loop and complete the habit cycle. If a behavior is insufficient in any of the 4 stages, it will not become a habit. The habit loop. The cue triggers a craving, which motivates a response, which provides a reward, which satisfies the craving and, ultimately, becomes associated with the cue. Together, these 4 steps form a neurological feedback loop. Cue, craving, response, reward. Cue, craving, response, reward. That ultimately allows us to create automatic habits. This cycle is known as the habit loop. This 4-step process is not something that happens occasionally, but rather it is an endless feedback loop that is running and active during every moment you are alive. We can split these 4 steps into 2 phases: the problem phase and the solution phase. The problem phase includes the cue and the craving, and it is when you realize that something needs to change. The solution phase includes the response and the reward, and it is when you take action and achieve the change you desire. The 4 laws of behavior change. This framework provides a simple set of rules for creating good habits and breaking bad ones. How to create a good habit. The first law, cue, make it obvious. The second law, craving, make it attractive. The third law, response, make it easy. The fourth law, reward, make it satisfying. We can invert these laws to learn how to break a bad habit. How to break a bad habit. Inversion of the first law, cue, make it invisible. Inversion of the second law, craving, make it unattractive. Inversion of the third law, response, make it difficult. Inversion of the fourth law, reward, make it unsatisfying. Whenever you want to change your behavior, you can simply ask yourself, 1. How can I make it obvious? 2. How can I make it attractive? 3. How can I make it easy? 4. How can I make it satisfying? The key to creating good habits and breaking bad ones is to understand these fundamental laws and how to change them to your specifications. The first law, make it obvious. Chapter 4. The man who didn't look right. A woman attended a family gathering, and upon seeing her father-in-law, insisted that he visited a hospital immediately. A few hours later, the father-in-law was undergoing a life-changing surgery after a test at the hospital had shown he was at a great risk for heart attack. This woman had spent years working as a paramedic. The question becomes, how did she predict his impending heart attack? After many years of working with people with heart failure, the woman had unknowingly developed the ability to recognize the symptoms that precedes heart attack on sight. She couldn't explain what it was that she noticed in her father-in-law's face, but she knew something was wrong. The human brain is a prediction machine. It is continuously taking in your surroundings and analyzing the information it comes across. That's why with enough practice, You can pick up on the cues that predict certain outcomes without consciously thinking about it. We underestimate how much our brain and bodies can do without thinking. You don't need to be aware of the cue for a habit to begin. You can notice an opportunity and take action without dedicating conscious attention to it. This is what makes habits useful. It's also what makes them dangerous. As habits form, your actions come under the direction of your automatic and non-conscious mind. This is one reason why you can fall into old patterns before you figure out what's even happening. Before we can effectively build new habits, we need to get a handle on our current ones. This might seem easy, but it's not. Once a habit is firmly rooted in your life, it is mostly non-conscious and automatic, and that's where the problem lies. The habit scorecard. The Japanese railway system is regarded as one of the best in the world. This is because they use a system known as pointing and calling. Pointing and calling is so effective because it raises the level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level. The more automatic a behavior becomes, the less likely we are to consciously think about it. And when we've done something 1,000 times before, we begin to overlook things. Many of our failures in performance are largely attributable to a lack of self-awareness. One of our greatest challenges in changing habits is maintaining awareness of what we are actually doing. This helps explain why the consequences of bad habits can sneak up on us. We need a point-and-call system for our personal lives. That's the origin of the habit scorecard, which is a simple exercise you can use to become more aware of your behavior. To create your own, make a list of your daily habits. Here's a sample of where your list might start. 1. Wake up. 2. Turn off alarm. 3. Check my phone. 4. Go to the bathroom. 5. Weigh myself. 6. Take a shower. Once you have a full list, look at each behavior and ask yourself, is this a good habit, a bad habit, or a neutral habit? If it is a good habit, write plus next to it. If it is a bad habit, write. If it is a neutral habit, write equals. For example, the list above might look like this. 1. Wake up equals. 2. Turn off alarm equals. 3. Check my phone. 4. Go to the bathroom equals. 5. Weigh myself plus. 6. Take a shower plus. The marks you give to a particular habit will depend on your situation and your goals. Scoring your habits can be a bit more complex for another reason as well. The labels good habit and bad habit are slightly inaccurate. There are no good habits or bad habits. There are only effective habits. That is, effective at solving problems. All habits serve you in some way, even the bad ones. That's why you repeat them. For this exercise, categorize your habits by how they will benefit you in the long run. Good habits will have net positive outcomes. Bad habits have net negative outcomes. If you're still having trouble determining how to rate a particular habit, here's a question to use. Does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be? As you create your habit scorecard, there is no need to change anything at first. The goal is to simply notice what is actually going on. The first step to changing bad habits is to be on the lookout for them. If you feel like you need extra help, then you can try pointing and calling in your own life. Say out loud the action that you are thinking of taking and what the outcome will be. Hearing your bad habits spoken aloud makes the consequences seem more real. It adds weight to the action rather than letting yourself mindlessly slip into an old routine. As the author wrote, this is effective because the process of behavior change always starts with awareness. Strategies like pointing and calling and the habit scorecard are focused on getting you to recognize your habits and acknowledge the cues that trigger them, which makes it possible to respond in a way that benefits you. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. In 2001, researchers in Britain wanted to help 248 people to build better exercise habits. The subjects were divided into 3 groups. The first group was the control group. They were simply asked to track how often they exercised. The second group was the motivation group. They were asked not only to track their workouts, but also to read some material on the benefits of exercise. The third group received the same presentation as the second group. But what they did different was that they were also asked to formulate a plan for when and where they would exercise over the following week. Specifically, each member of the third group completed the following sentence. During the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day at time. In place. In the first and second groups, 35 to 38% of people exercised at least once per week. But 91% of the third group exercised at least once per week. The sentence they filled out is what researchers refer to as an implementation intention, which is a plan you make beforehand about when and where to act. The cues that can trigger a habit come in a wide range of forms, but the two most common cues are time and location. Implementation intentions leverage both of these cues. Broadly speaking, the format for creating an implementation intention is: when situation X arises, I will perform response Y. People who make a specific plan for when and where they will perform a new habit are more likely to follow through. Too many people try to change their habits without these basic details figured out. Many people think they lack motivation when what they really lack is clarity. Once an implementation intention has been set, you don't have to wait for inspiration to strike. When the moment of action occurs, there is no need to make a decision. Simply follow your predetermined plan. The simple way to apply this strategy to your habits is to fill out this sentence: I will behavior, at time and location. For example, if you intend to study, your implementation intention could be something like, I will study Latin for 10 minutes at 6 p.m. in my bedroom. There is another benefit to implementation intentions. Being specific about what you want and how you will achieve it helps you say no to things that derail progress and distract your attention. There are several ways to apply the strategy of implementation intentions in your life and work, what the author refers to as habit stacking. Habit stacking, a simple plan to overhaul your habits. There's a phenomenon known as the Diderot effect. It states that obtaining a new possession often creates a spiral of consumption that leads to additional purchases. You can see this pattern everywhere. You buy a dress and have to get new shoes and earrings to match. Many human behaviors follow this cycle. You often decide what to do next based on what you have just finished doing. No behavior happens in isolation. Each action becomes a cue that triggers the next behavior. Why is this important? When it comes to building new habits, you can use the connectedness of behavior to your advantage. One of the best ways to build a new habit is to identify a current habit you already do each day and then stack your new behavior on top. This is called habit stacking. Habit stacking is a special form of an implementation intention. Rather than pairing your new habit with a particular time and location, you pair it with a current habit. The habit stacking formula is, after a current habit, I will new habit. For example, meditation. After I pour my cup of coffee each morning, I will meditate for 1 minute. The key is to tie your desired behavior into something you already do each day. Once you have mastered this basic structure, you can begin to create larger stacks by chaining small habits together. You can also insert new behaviors into the middle of your current routines. For example, you may already have a morning routine that looks like this: wake up, make my bed, take a shower. Let's say you want to develop the habit of reading more each night. You can expand your habit stack and try something like, wake up, make my bed, place a book on my pillow, take a shower. Now, when you climb into bed each night, a book will be sitting there waiting for you to enjoy. As the author emphasized, habit stacking allows you to create a set of simple rules that guide your future behavior. No matter how you use this strategy, the secret to creating a successful habit stack is selecting the right cue to kick things off. Unlike an implementation intention, which specifically states the time and location for a given behavior, habit stacking implicitly has the time and location built into it. Also, when and where you choose to insert a habit into your daily routine can make a big difference. Don't ask yourself to do a habit when you're likely to be occupied with something else. Your cue should also have the same frequency as your desired habit. If you want to do a habit every day, but you stack it on top of a habit that only happens on Mondays, that's not a good choice. One way to find the right trigger for your habit stack is by brainstorming a list of your current habits. You can use your habit scorecard from the last chapter as a starting point. Alternatively, you can create a list with 2 columns. In the first column, write down the habits you do each day without fail. For example, 1. Get out of bed. 2. Take a shower. 3. Brush your teeth. 4. Get dressed. 5. Brew a cup of coffee. In the second column, write down all of the things that happen to you each day without fail. Armed with these 2 lists, you can begin searching for the best place to layer your new habit into your lifestyle. Habit stacking works best when the cue is highly specific and immediately actionable. Many people select cues that are too vague. Habits like read more or eat better do not provide instruction on how and when to act. Be specific and clear. After I close the door. After I brush my teeth. After I sit down at the table. The specificity is important. The first law of behavior change is to make it obvious. Implementation intentions and habit stacking are among the most practical ways to create obvious cues for your habits. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. If you walk into the kitchen and see a plate of cookies on the counter, you'll pick up half a dozen and start eating, even if you hadn't been thinking about them beforehand and didn't necessarily feel hungry. Your habits change depending on the room you are in and the cues in front of you. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. In church, people tend to talk in whispers. On a dark street, people act wary and guarded. This is why the most common form of change is not internal, but external. Every habit is context-dependent. The truth is that many of the actions we take each day are shaped not by purposeful drive and choice, but by the most obvious option. In humans, perception is directed by the sensory nervous system. We perceive the world through sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. But we also have other ways of sensing stimuli. Some are conscious, but many are non-conscious. The most powerful of all human sensory abilities is vision. The human body has about 11 million sensory receptors. Approximately 10 million of those are dedicated to sight. Some experts estimate that half of the brain's resources are used on vision. Given that we are more dependent on vision than on any other sense, it should come as no surprise that visual cues are the greatest catalyst of our behavior. For this reason, a small change in what you see can lead to a big shift in what you do. How to design your environment for success. Every habit is initiated by a cue, and we are more likely to notice cues that stand out. Unfortunately, the environments where we live and work often make it easy not to do certain actions because there is no obvious cue to trigger the behavior. It's easy not to read a book when the bookshelf is in the corner of the guest room. When the cues that spark a habit are subtle or hidden, they are easy to ignore. By comparison, creating obvious visual cues can draw your attention toward a desired habit. If you want to make a habit a big part of your life, make the cue a big part of your environment. The most persistent behaviors usually have multiple cues. By sprinkling triggers throughout your surroundings, you increase the odds that you'll think about your habit throughout the day. The context is the cue. Our behavior is not defined by the objects in the environment, but our relationship to them. In fact, this is a useful way to think about the influence of the environment on your behavior. Stop thinking about your environment as filled with objects. Start thinking about it as filled with relationships. Think in terms of how you interact with the spaces around you. For one person, her couch is the place where she reads for an hour each night. For someone else, the couch is where he watches television and eats a bowl of ice cream after work. Different people can have different memories and thus different habits associated with the same place. You can train yourself to link a particular habit with a particular context. The power of context also reveals an important strategy. Habits can be easier to change in a new environment. It helps to escape the subtle triggers and cues that nudge you toward your current habits. It is easier to associate a new habit with a new context than to build a new habit in the face of competing cues. It can be hard to study in the living room without getting distracted if that's where you always play video games. But when you step outside your normal environment, you leave your behavioral biases behind. You aren't battling old environmental cues, which allows new habits to form without interruption. When you can't manage to get to an entirely new environment, redefine or rearrange your current one. Create a separate space for work, study, exercise, entertainment, and cooking. The mantra I find useful is one space, one use. Whenever possible, avoid mixing the context of one habit with another. When you start mixing contexts, you'll start mixing habits, and the easier ones will usually win out. As he explains, this is one reason why the versatility of modern technology is both a strength and a weakness. You can use your phone for all sorts of tasks, which makes it a powerful device. But when you can use your phone to do nearly anything, it becomes hard to associate it with one task. You want to be productive, but you're also conditioned to browse social media, check email, and play video games whenever you open your phone. It's a mishmash of cues. If your space is limited, divide your room into activity zones. a chair for reading, a desk for writing, a table for eating. You can do the same with your digital spaces. Every habit should have a home. A stable environment where everything has a place and a purpose is an environment where habits can easily form. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. When scientists analyze people who appear to have tremendous self-control, it turns out those individuals aren't all that different from those who are struggling. Instead, disciplined people are better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require too much willpower and self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. It's easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it very often. This counterintuitive idea makes even more sense once you understand what happens when a habit is formed in the brain. A habit that has been encoded in the mind is ready to be used whenever the relevant situation arises. Once a habit has been encoded, the urge to act follows whenever the environmental cues reappear. Bad habits are autocatalytic. The process feeds itself. They foster the feelings they try to numb. You feel bad, so you eat junk food. Because you eat junk food, you feel bad. Researchers refer to this phenomenon as cue-induced wanting. An external trigger causes a compulsive craving to repeat a bad habit. You can break a habit, but you're unlikely to forget it. Once the mental grooves of habit have been carved into your brain, they are nearly impossible to remove entirely. And that means that simply resisting temptation is an ineffective strategy. A more reliable approach is to cut bad habits off at the source. One of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it. If you can't seem to get any work done, leave your phone in another room for a few hours. This practice is an inversion of the first law of behavior change. Rather than make it obvious, you can make it invisible. Simple changes like this are very effective. Remove a single cue and the entire habit often fades away. Self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. The secret to self-control is to make the cues of your good habits obvious and the cues of your bad habits invisible. The second law, make it attractive. Chapter 8. How to make a habit irresistible. There's a phenomenon referred to by scientists as supernormal stimuli. A supernormal stimulus is a heightened version of reality. Humans are prone to fall for exaggerated versions of reality. The more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is to become habit-forming. Society is filled with highly engineered versions of reality that are more attractive than the world our ancestors evolved in. Stores have mannequins with exaggerated hips and breasts to sell clothes. If you want to increase the odds that a behavior will occur, then you need to make it attractive. While it is not possible to transform every habit into a supernormal stimulus, we can make any habit more enticing. To do this, we must start by understanding what a craving is and how it works. The dopamine-driven feedback loop. Every behavior that is highly habit-forming usually leads to the release of higher levels of dopamine. When it comes to habits, dopamine is released not only when you experience pleasure, but also when you anticipate it. Cocaine addicts get a surge of dopamine when they see the powder, not after they take it. And whenever dopamine rises, so does your motivation to act. It is the anticipation of a reward, not the fulfillment of it, that gets us to take action. Interestingly, the reward system that is activated in the brain when you receive a reward is the same system that is activated when you anticipate a reward. This is one reason the anticipation of an experience can often feel better than the attainment of it. Scientists refer to this as the difference between wanting and liking. The dopamine spike. Your brain has far more neural circuitry allocated for wanting rewards than for liking them. The fact that the brain allocates so much precious space to the regions responsible for craving and desire provides further evidence of the crucial role these processes play. Desire is the engine that drives behavior. Every action is taken because of the anticipation that precedes it. It is the craving that leads to the response. These insights reveal the importance of the second law of behavior change. We need to make our habits attractive because it is the expectation of a rewarding experience that motivates us to act in the first place. This is where a strategy known as temptation bundling comes into play. How to use temptation bundling to make your habits more attractive. Temptation bundling works by linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do. You're more likely to find a behavior attractive if you get to do one of your favorite things at the same time. Maybe you want to get a pedicure, but you need to clean out your email inbox. Solution: only get a pedicure while processing overdue work emails. Temptation bundling is one way to apply a psychology theory known as Premack's principle. The principle states that more probable behaviors will reinforce less probable behaviors. In other words, even if you don't really want to process overdue work emails, you'll become conditioned to do it if it means you get to do something you really want to do along the way. You can even combine temptation bundling with the habit stacking strategy discussed in Chapter 5 to create a set of rules to guide your behavior. The habit stacking plus temptation bundling formula is 1. After current habit, I will habit I need. 2. After habit I need, I will habit I want. If you want to read the news, but you need to express more gratitude. After I get my morning coffee, I will say one thing I'm grateful for that happened yesterday need. After I say one thing I'm grateful for, I will read the news want. The hope is that eventually you'll look forward to doing what you actually want to do because it means you get to do something you really like to do. Doing the thing you need to do means you get to do the thing you want to do. Chapter 9. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits. There was a Hungarian man who wanted to prove that a genius isn't born but trained. He eventually got married and raised 3 daughters who became chess champions globally. And the simple reason was because he created an environment where everything the kids were exposed to from childhood had to do with chess. The seductive pull of social norms. Humans are herd animals. We want to fit in, to bond with others, and to earn the respect and approval of our peers. One of the deepest human desires is to belong. And this ancient preference exerts a powerful influence on our modern behavior. We don't choose our earliest habits, we imitate them. We follow the script handed down by our friends and family, our church or school, our local community and society at large. Most of the time, going along with the group does not feel like a burden. That's because everyone wants to belong. If you grow up in a family that rewards you for your chess skills, playing chess will seem like a very attractive thing to do. Behaviors are attractive when they help us fit in. We imitate the habits of 3 groups in particular. 1. The close. 2. The many. 3. The powerful. 1. Imitating the close. Proximity has a powerful effect on our behavior. This is true of the physical environment, but also of the social environment. Our friends and family provide a sort of invisible peer pressure that pulls us in their direction. One of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. New habits seem achievable when you see others doing them every day. Surround yourself with people who have the habits you want to have yourself. You'll rise together. To make your habits even more attractive, you can take this strategy one step further. Join a culture where 1. Your desired behavior is the normal behavior, and 2. You already have something in common with the group. Nothing sustains motivation better than belonging to the tribe. It transforms a personal quest into a shared one. The shared identity begins to reinforce your personal identity. This is why remaining part of a group after achieving a goal is crucial to maintaining your habits. 2. Imitating the many. Whenever we are unsure how to act, we look to the group to guide our behavior. We check reviews on Amazon because we want to imitate the best buying, eating, and travel habits. It's usually a smart strategy. There is evidence in numbers, but there can be a downside. The normal behavior of the tribe often overpowers the desired behavior of the individual. There is tremendous internal pressure to comply with the norms of the group. The reward of being accepted is often greater than the reward of winning an argument, looking smart, or finding truth. Most days, we'd rather be wrong with the crowd than be right by ourselves. The human mind knows how to get along with others. It wants to get along with others. This is our natural mode. You can override it. You can choose to ignore the group or to stop caring what other people think. But it takes work. 3. Imitating the powerful. Humans everywhere pursue power, prestige, and status. Historically, a person with greater power and status has access to more resources. We are drawn to behaviors that earn us respect, approval, admiration, and status. This is one reason we care so much about the habits of highly effective people. We try to copy the behavior of successful people because we desire success ourselves. Many of our daily habits are imitations of people we admire. High-status people enjoy the approval, respect, and praise of others. And that means if a behavior can get us approval, respect, and praise, we find it attractive. We are also motivated to avoid behaviors that would lower our status. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. Here the author goes into detail about where cravings come from. Every behavior has a surface-level craving and a deeper, underlying motive. As the author explains, I often have a craving that goes something like this. I want to eat tacos. If you were to ask me why I want to eat tacos, I wouldn't say, because I need food to survive. But the truth is, somewhere deep down, I am motivated to eat tacos because I have to eat to survive. The underlying motive is to obtain food and water, even if my specific craving is for a taco. Some of our underlying motives include 1. Conserve energy. 2. Obtain food and water. 3. Find love and reproduce. A craving is just a specific manifestation of a deeper underlying motive. Your brain did not evolve with a desire to smoke cigarettes, or to check Instagram, or to play video games. At a deep level, you simply want to reduce uncertainty and relieve anxiety to win social acceptance and approval. Look at nearly any product that is habit-forming and you'll see that it does not create a new motivation, but rather latches onto the underlying motives of human nature. 1. Find love and reproduce equals using Tinder. 2. Connect and bond with others equals going through Facebook. Your habits are modern-day solutions to ancient desires. New versions of old vices. The underlying motives behind human behavior remain the same. The specific habits we perform differ based on the period of history. Here's the powerful part. There are many different ways to address the same underlying motive. One person might learn to reduce stress by smoking a cigarette. Another person learns to ease their anxiety by going for a run. Your current habits are not necessarily the best way to solve the problems you face. They're just the methods you learn to use. Once you associate a solution with a problem you need to solve, you keep coming back to it. Habits are all about associations. These associations determine whether we predict a habit to be worth repeating or not. You see a cue, categorize it based on past experience, and determine the appropriate response. This all happens in an instant, but it plays a crucial role in your habits because every action is preceded by a prediction. Life feels reactive, but it is actually predictive. Our behavior is dependent on how we interpret the events that happen to us, not necessarily the objective reality of the events themselves. Two people can look at the same cigarette, and one feels the urge to smoke while the other is repulsed by the smell. The same cue can spark a good habit or a bad habit depending on your prediction. The cause of your habits is actually the prediction that precedes them. These predictions lead to feelings, which is how we typically describe a craving, a feeling, a desire, an urge. Feelings and emotions transform the cues we perceive and the predictions we make into a signal that we can apply. A craving is the sense that something is missing. It is the desire to change your internal state. Desire is the difference between where you are now and where you want to be in the future. Even the tiniest action is tinged with the motivation to feel differently than you do in the moment. Our feelings and emotions tell us whether to hold steady in our current state or to make a change. They help us decide the best course of action. Neurologists have discovered that when emotions and feelings are impaired, we actually lose the ability to make decisions. How to reprogram your brain to enjoy hard habits. You can make hard habits more attractive if you can learn to associate them with a positive experience. Sometimes, all you need is a slight mindset shift. Reframing your habits to highlight their benefits rather than their drawbacks is a fast way to reprogram your mind and make a habit seem more attractive. Saving money is often associated with sacrifice. However, you can associate it with freedom rather than limitation if you realize one simple truth. Living below your current means increases your future means. These little mindset shifts aren't magic, but they can help change the feelings you associate with a particular habit or situation. If you want to take it a step further, you can create a motivation ritual. You simply practice associating your habits with something you enjoy. Then you can use that cue whenever you need a bit of motivation. For instance, if you always play the same song before having sex, then you'll begin to link the music with the act. Whenever you want to get in the mood, just press play. The key to finding and fixing the causes of your bad habits is to reframe the associations you have about them. The third law. Make it easy. Chapter 11. Walk slowly but never backward. It is easy to get bogged down trying to find the optimal plan for change. We are so focused on figuring out the best approach that we never get around to taking action. I refer to this as the difference between being in motion and taking action. The two ideas sound similar, but they're not the same. When you're in motion, you're planning and strategizing and learning. Those are all good things, but they don't produce a result. Action, on the other hand, is the type of behavior that will deliver an outcome. If I outline 20 ideas for articles I want to write, that's motion. If I actually sit down and write an article, that's action. Sometimes motion is useful, but it will never produce an outcome by itself. It doesn't matter how many times you go talk to the personal trainer, that motion will never get you in shape. Only the action of working out will get the result you're looking to achieve. If motion doesn't lead to results, why do we do it? We do it because motion allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. If you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. You don't need to map out every feature of a new habit. You just need to practice it. This is the first takeaway of the third law. You just need to get your reps in. If you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. How long does it actually take to form a new habit? Habit formation is the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition. The more you repeat an activity, the more the structure of your brain changes to become efficient at that activity. Repeating a habit leads to clear physical changes in the brain, like the muscles of the body responding to regular weight training. Particular regions of the brain adapt as they are used and atrophy as they are abandoned. Each time you repeat an action, you are activating a particular neural circuit associated with that habit. This means that simply putting in your reps is one of the most critical steps you can take to encoding a new habit. All habits follow a similar trajectory from effortful practice to automatic behavior, a process known as automaticity. Automaticity is the ability to perform a behavior without thinking about each step, which occurs when the non-conscious mind takes over. Habits form based on frequency, not time. One of the most common questions I hear is, how long does it take to build a new habit? But what people really should be asking is, how many does it take to form a new habit? That is, how many repetitions are required to make a habit automatic? There is nothing magical about time passing with regard to habit formation. It doesn't matter if it's been 21 days or 30 days or 300 days. What matters is the rate at which you perform the behavior. To build a habit, you need to practice it. And the most effective way to make practice happen is to adhere to the third law of behavior change. Make it easy. The amount of time you have been performing a habit is not as important as the number of times you have performed it. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. The Shape of Human Behavior. Conventional wisdom says that motivation is the key to habit change. Maybe if you really wanted it, you'd actually do it. But the truth is, our real motivation is to do what is convenient. Regardless of what the latest productivity bestseller will tell you, this is a smart strategy, not a dumb one. Energy is precious, and the brain is wired to conserve it whenever possible. It is human nature to follow the law of least effort. Every action requires a certain amount of energy. The more energy required, the less likely it is to occur. If your goal is to do 100 push-ups per day, that's a lot of energy. In the beginning, when you're motivated and excited, you can muster the strength to get started. But after a few days, such a massive effort feels exhausting. Meanwhile, sticking to the habit of doing 1 push-up per day requires almost no energy to get started. And the less energy a habit requires, the more likely it is to occur. The idea behind Make It Easy is not to only do easy things. The idea is to make it as easy as possible in the moment to do things that pay off in the long run. How to achieve more with less effort. One of the most effective ways to reduce the friction associated with your habits is to practice environment design. In Chapter 6, we discussed environment design as a method for making cues more obvious, but you can also optimize your environment to make actions easier. For example, when deciding where to practice a new habit, it is best to choose a place that is already along the path of your daily routine. Habits are easier to build when they fit into the flow of your life. You are more likely to go to the gym if it is on your way to work, because stopping doesn't add much friction to your lifestyle. By comparison, if the gym is off the path of your normal commute, even by just a few blocks, now you're going out of your way to get there. Similarly, when we remove the points of friction that sap our time and energy, We can achieve more with less effort. If you look at the most habit-forming products, you'll notice that one of the things these goods and services do best is remove little bits of friction from your life. Dating apps reduce the friction of making social introductions. The central idea is to create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Much of the battle of building better habits comes down to finding ways to reduce the friction associated with our good habits and increase the friction associated with our bad ones. Prime the environment for future use. Whenever you organize a space for its intended purpose, you are priming it to make the next action easy. There are many ways to prime your environment so it's ready for immediate use. Want to exercise? Set out your workout clothes, shoes, gym bag, and water bottle ahead of time. You can also invert this principle and prime the environment to make bad behaviors difficult. If you find yourself watching too much television, for example, then unplug it after each use. Only plug it in if you can say out loud the name of the show you want to watch. This setup creates just enough friction to prevent mindless viewing. If that doesn't do it, you can take it a step further. Unplug the television and take the batteries out of the remote after each use, so it takes an extra 10 seconds to turn it back on. And if you're really hardcore, move the television out of the living room and into a closet after each use. You can be sure you'll only take it out when you really want to watch something. The greater the friction, the less likely the habit. These tricks are unlikely to curb a true addiction, but for many of us, a little bit of friction can be the difference between sticking with a good habit or sliding into a bad one. Human behavior follows the law of least effort. We will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. Chapter 13. How to Stop Procrastinating by Using the 2-Minute Rule. Researchers estimate that 40 to 50% of our actions on any given day are done out of habit. As the author wrote, habits are like the entrance ramp to a highway. They lead you down a path, and, before you know it, you're speeding toward the next behavior. It seems to be easier to continue what you're already doing than to start doing something different. In this way, the habits you follow without thinking often determine the choices you make when you are thinking. Every day, there are a handful of moments that deliver an outsized impact. I refer to these little choices as decisive moments. Decisive moments. Decisive moments set the options available to your future self. For example, walking into a restaurant is a decisive moment because it determines what you'll be eating for lunch. Technically, you are in control of what you order, but in a larger sense, you can only order an item if it is on the menu. Your options are constrained by what's available. They are shaped by the first choice. We are limited by where our habits lead us. This is why mastering the decisive moments throughout your day is so important. Each day is made up of many moments, but it is really a few habitual choices that determine the path you take. These little choices stack up, each one setting the trajectory for how you spend the next chunk of time. The 2-minute rule. When you dream about making a change, excitement inevitably takes over, and you end up trying to do too much too soon. The most effective way I know to counteract this tendency is to use the 2-minute rule, which states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. You'll find that nearly any habit can be scaled down into a 2-minute version. Read before bed each night becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. The idea is to make your habits as easy as possible to start. Anyone can meditate for 1 minute, read 1 page, or put 1 item of clothing away. This is a powerful strategy because once you've started doing the right thing, it is much easier to continue doing it. A new habit should not feel like a challenge. You can usually figure out the gateway habits that will lead to your desired outcome by mapping out your goals on a scale from very easy to very hard. For instance, running a marathon is very hard. Walking 10 minutes is easy. And putting on your running shoes is very easy. Your goal might be to run a marathon, but your gateway habit is to put on your running shoes. That's how you follow the 2-minute rule. People often think it's weird to get hyped about reading 1 page. But the point is not to do one thing. The point is to master the habit of showing up. A habit must be established before it can be improved. If you can't learn the basic skill of showing up, then you have little hope of mastering the finer details. The 2-minute rule can seem like a trick to some people. You know that the real goal is to do more than just 2 minutes, so it may feel like you're trying to fool yourself. Nobody is actually aspiring to read 1 page, or do 1 push-up, or open their notes. And if you know it's a mental trick, Why would you fall for it? If the 2-minute rule feels forced, try this. Do it for 2 minutes and then stop. Go for a run, but you must stop after 2 minutes. Start meditating, but you must stop after 2 minutes. The secret is to always stay below the point where it feels like work. Strategies like this work for another reason, too. They reinforce the identity you want to build. If you show up at the gym 5 days in a row, even if it's just for 2 minutes, you are solidifying your new identity. You're not worried about getting in shape. You're focused on becoming the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. You're taking the smallest action that confirms the type of person you want to be. We rarely think about change this way because everyone is consumed by the end goal. 1 minute of reading is better than never picking up a book. It's better to do less than you hope than to do nothing at all. At some point, once you've established the habit and you're showing up each day, you can combine the 2-minute rule with a technique we call habit shaping to scale your habit back up toward your ultimate goal. Start by mastering the first 2 minutes of the smallest version of the behavior. Then, advance to an intermediate step and repeat the process. You'll end up with a habit you had originally hoped to build while still keeping your focus where it should be, on the first 2 minutes of the behavior. Examples of habit shaping. Becoming an early riser. Phase 1. Be home by 10 p.m. every night. Phase 2. Have all devices, TV, phone, etc., turned off by 10 p.m. every night. Phase 3. Be in bed by 10 p.m. every night, reading a book, talking with your partner. Phase 4. Lights off by 10 p.m. every night. Phase 5. Wake up at 6 a.m. every day. Chapter 14. How to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. Sometimes success is less about making good habits easy and more about making bad habits hard. This is an inversion of the third law of behavior change. Make it difficult. If you find yourself continually struggling to follow through on your plans, make your bad habits more difficult by creating what psychologists call a commitment device. A commitment device is a choice you make in the present that controls your actions in the future. It is a way to lock in future behavior, bind you to good habits, and restrict you from bad ones. There are many ways to create a commitment device. For example, you can reduce overeating by purchasing food in individual packages rather than in bulk size. Commitment devices are useful because they enable you to take advantage of good intentions before you can fall victim to temptation. The key is to change the task such that it requires more work to get out of the good habit than to get started on it. If you're feeling motivated to get in shape, schedule a yoga session and pay ahead of time. When the time comes to act, the only way to bail is to cancel the meeting, which requires effort and may cost money. Commitment devices increase the odds that you'll do the right thing in the future by making bad habits difficult in the present. How to automate a habit and never think about it again. The best way to break a bad habit is to make it impractical to do. Increase the friction until you don't even have the option to act. One-time actions that lock in good habits. 1. Nutrition. Buy a water filter to clean your drinking water. Use smaller plates to reduce caloric intake. 2. Finance. Enroll in an automatic savings plan. Set up automatic bill pay. Cut cable service. Ask service providers to lower your bills. There are many ways to automate good habits and eliminate bad ones. Typically, they involve putting technology to work for you. Social media browsing can be cut off with a website blocker. When you automate as much of your life as possible, you can spend your effort on the tasks machines cannot do yet. Of course, the power of technology can work against us as well. Binge watching becomes a habit because you have to put more effort into stop looking at the screen than to continue doing so. Technology creates a level of convenience that enables you to act on your smallest whims and desires. The downside of automation is that we can find ourselves jumping from easy task to easy task without making time for more difficult, but ultimately more rewarding, work. The fourth law. Make it satisfying. Chapter 15. The cardinal rule of behavior change. We are more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience is satisfying. And this is entirely logical. Feelings of pleasure. Pleasure teaches your brain that a behavior is worth remembering and repeating. On the other hand, if an experience is not satisfying, we have little reason to repeat it. The cardinal rule of behavior change is this. What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. You learn what to do in the future based on what you were rewarded for doing or punished for doing in the past. Positive emotions cultivate habits. Negative emotions destroy them. The first three laws of behavior change: make it obvious, make it attractive, and make it easy. Increase the odds that a behavior will be performed this time. The fourth law of behavior change: make it satisfying, increases the odds that a behavior will be repeated next time. It completes the habit loop. But there's a trick. We are not looking for just any type of satisfaction. We are looking for immediate satisfaction. The mismatch between immediate and delayed rewards. Our ancestors lived in what scientists call an immediate return environment because their actions instantly deliver clear and immediate outcomes. Today we live in what scientists call a delayed return environment because you can work for years before your actions delivering the intended payoff. The human brain did not evolve for life in a delayed return environment. The world has changed much in recent years, but human nature has changed little. Our ancestors spent their days responding to grave threats, securing the next meal, and taking shelter from a storm. As a result of this, it made sense to place a high value on instant gratification. The distant future was less of a concern. And after thousands of generations in an immediate return environment, our brains evolved to prefer quick payoffs to long-term ones. Behavioral economists refer to this tendency as time inconsistency. That is, the way your brain evaluates rewards is inconsistent across time. You value the present more than the future. Usually this tendency serves us well. A reward that is certain right now is typically worth more than one that is merely possible in the future. But occasionally, our bias toward instant gratification causes problems. Why would someone overeat when they know it increases their risk of obesity? Once you understand how the brain prioritizes rewards, the answers become clear. The consequences of bad habits are delayed while the rewards are immediate. Smoking might kill you in 10 years, but it reduces stress and eases your nicotine cravings now. Every habit produces multiple outcomes across time. Unfortunately, these outcomes are often misaligned. With our bad habits, the immediate outcome usually feels good, but the ultimate outcome feels bad. With good habits, it is the reverse. The immediate outcome is unenjoyable, but the ultimate outcome feels good. As a general rule, the more immediate pleasure you get from an action, the more strongly you should question whether it aligns with your long-term goals. An updated cardinal rule of behavior change would be: what is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. Our preference for instant gratification reveals an important truth about success. Because of how we are wired, most people will spend all day chasing quick hits of satisfaction. The road less traveled is the road of delayed gratification. If you're willing to wait for the rewards, you'll face less competition and often get a bigger payoff. Success in nearly every field requires you to ignore an immediate reward in favor of a delayed reward. Here's the problem. Most people know that delaying gratification is the wise approach. They want the benefits of good habits, to be healthy, productive, at peace. But these outcomes are seldom top of mind at the decisive moment. Thankfully, it's possible to train yourself to delay gratification, but you need to work with the grain of human nature, not against it. The best way to do this is to add a little bit of immediate pleasure to the habits that pay off in the long run and a little bit of immediate pain to ones that don't. How to turn instant gratification to your advantage. The vital thing in getting a habit to stick is to feel successful, even if it's in a small way. The feeling of success is a signal that your habit paid off and that the work was worth the effort. In a perfect world, the reward for a good habit is the habit itself. In the real world, good habits tend to feel worthwhile only after they have provided you with something. In the beginning, you need a reason to stay on track. This is why immediate rewards are essential. They keep you excited while the delayed rewards accumulate in the background. What we're really talking about here, when we're discussing immediate rewards, is the ending of a behavior. The ending of any experience is vital because we tend to remember it more than other phases. You want the ending of your habit to be satisfying. The best approach is to use reinforcement, which refers to the process of using an immediate reward to increase the rate of a behavior. Immediate reinforcement can be especially helpful when dealing with habits of avoidance, which are behaviors you want to stop doing. It can be challenging to stick with habits like no alcohol this month because nothing happens when you skip happy hour drinks. It can be hard to feel satisfied when there is no action in the first place. All you're doing is resisting temptation, and there isn't much satisfying about that. One solution is to turn the situation on its head. You want to make avoidance visible. Open a savings account and label it for something you want, maybe a leather jacket. Whenever you pass on a bottle of beer, put the same amount of money in the account. The immediate reward of seeing yourself save money toward the leather jacket feels a lot better than being deprived. You are making it satisfying to do nothing. It is worth noting that it is important to select short-term rewards that reinforce your identity rather than ones that conflict with it. Buying a new jacket is fine if you're trying to stop drinking, but it doesn't work if you're trying to budget and save money. Instead, going on a leisurely walk are good examples of rewarding yourself with free time, which aligns with your ultimate goal of more freedom. Now the short-term reward is aligned with your long-term vision. That said, it takes time for the evidence to accumulate and a new identity to emerge. Immediate reinforcement helps maintain motivation in the short term while you're waiting for the long-term rewards to arrive. In a nutshell, a habit needs to be enjoyable for it to last. Chapter 16: How to Stick with Good Habits Every Day. There's a woman that moves a hairpin from one container to another whenever she writes a page of her book. Making progress is satisfying, and visual measures, like moving hairpins, provide clear evidence of your progress. They reinforce your behavior and add a little bit of immediate satisfaction to any activity. Visual measurement comes in many forms: workout logs, the progress bar on a software download, even the page numbers in a book. The best way to measure your progress is with a habit tracker. How to keep your habits on track. A habit tracker is a simple way to measure whether you did a habit. The most basic format is to get a calendar and cross off each day you stick with your routine. For example, if you meditate on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, each of those dates gets an X. As time rolls by, the calendar becomes a record of your habit streak. Don't break the chain is a powerful mantra. Don't break the chain of creating every day, and you will end up with an impressive portfolio. Habit tracking is powerful because it leverages multiple laws of behavior change. It simultaneously makes a behavior obvious, attractive, and satisfying. Benefit 1. Habit tracking is obvious. Recording your last action creates a trigger that can initiate your next one. Research has shown that people who track their progress on goals like losing weight or quitting smoking are more likely to improve than those who don't. Habit tracking also keeps you honest. Most of us have a distorted view of our own behavior. We think we act better than we do. Measurement offers one way to overcome our blindness to our own behavior and notice what's really going on each day. Benefit 2. Habit tracking is attractive. The most effective form of motivation is progress. When we get a signal that we are moving forward, we become more motivated to continue down that path. This can be particularly powerful on a bad day. When you're feeling down, it's easy to forget about all the progress you have already made. Habit tracking provides visual proof of your hard work, a subtle reminder of how far you've come. Benefit 3. Habit tracking is satisfying. This is the most crucial benefit of all. Tracking can become its own form of reward. It is satisfying to cross an item off your to-do list or to mark an X on the calendar. It feels good to watch your results grow, and if it feels good, then you're more likely to endure. Tracking isn't for everyone, and there is no need to measure your entire life. But nearly anyone can benefit from it in some form. What can we do to make tracking easier? First, whenever possible, measurement should be automated. You'll probably be surprised by how much you're already tracking without knowing it. Second, manual tracking should be limited to your most important habits. It is better to consistently track one habit than to sporadically track 10. Finally, record each measurement immediately after the habit occurs. The completion of the behavior is the cue to write it down. This approach allows you to combine the habit stacking method mentioned in Chapter 5 with habit tracking. The habit stacking plus habit tracking formula is: after a current habit, I will track my habit. After I finish each set at the gym, I will record it in my workout journal. How to recover quickly when your habits break down. No matter how consistent you are with your habits, it is inevitable that life will interrupt you at some point. Perfection is not possible. There's a simple rule to follow: never miss twice. The first mistake is never the one that ruins you. It is the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. This is a distinguishing feature between winners and losers. Anyone can have a bad performance, But when successful people fail, they rebound quickly. The breaking of a habit doesn't matter if the reclaiming of it is fast. Simply doing something, even if it's a push-up, is huge. Don't put up a zero. Don't let losses eat into your compounding. Knowing when and when not to track a habit. The dark side of tracking a particular behavior is that we become driven by the number rather than the purpose behind it. This pitfall is evident in many areas of life. For example, we focus on working long hours instead of getting meaningful work done. In short, we optimize for what we measure. When we choose the wrong measurement, we get the wrong behavior. Measurement is only useful when it guides you and adds context to a larger picture, not when it consumes you. Each number is simply one piece of feedback in the overall system. In our data-driven world, we tend to overvalue numbers and undervalue anything ephemeral, soft, and difficult to quantify. We mistakenly think the factors we can measure are the only factors that exist. But just because you can measure something doesn't mean it's the most important thing. Also, just because you can't measure something doesn't mean it's not important at all. Chapter 17: How an Accountability Partner Can Change Everything. Just as we are more likely to repeat an experience when the ending is satisfying, we are also more likely to avoid an experience when the ending is painful. Pain is an effective teacher. If a failure is painful, it gets fixed. If a failure is relatively painless, it gets ignored. The more immediate and more costly a mistake is, the faster you will learn from it. The more immediate the pain, the less likely the behavior. If you want to prevent bad habits and eliminate unhealthy behaviors, then adding an instant cost to the action is a great way to reduce their odds. As soon as actions incur an immediate consequence, behavior begins to change. We'll jump through a lot of hoops to avoid a little bit of immediate pain. There is, of course, a limit to this. If you're going to rely on punishment to change behavior, then the strength of the punishment must match the relative strength of the behavior it is trying to correct. The more global, intangible, vague, and delayed the consequence, the less likely it is to influence individual behavior. The habit contract. A habit contract is a verbal or written agreement in which you state your commitment to a particular habit and the punishment that will occur if you don't follow through. Then you find one or two people to act as your accountability partners and sign off on the contract with you. To make bad habits unsatisfying, your best option is to make them painful in the moment. Creating a habit contract is a straightforward way to do exactly that. Even if you don't want to create a full-blown habit contract, simply having an accountability partner is useful. We are always trying to present our best selves to the world. We care about the opinions of those around us because it helps with others like us. This is precisely why getting an accountability partner or signing a habit contract can work so well. Advanced tactics. How to go from being merely good to being truly great. Chapter 18. The truth about talent. When genes matter and when they don't. The secret to maximizing your odds of success is to choose the right field of competition. This is just as true with habit change as it is with sports and business. Habits are easier to perform and more satisfying to stick with when they align with your natural inclinations and abilities. As the author explained, you always want to play a game where the odds are in your favor. Embracing this strategy requires the acceptance of the simple truth that people are born with different abilities. It's also important to understand that the strength of genetics also brings with it some weakness. Genes cannot be easily changed, which means they provide a powerful advantage in favorable situations and disadvantages in unfavorable circumstances. Also, our environment determines the suitability of our genes and the utility of our natural talents. When our environment changes, so do the qualities that determine success. The people at the top of any competitive field are not only well-trained, they are also well-suited to the task. And this is why, if you want to be truly great, selecting the right place to focus is crucial. Genes do not determine your destiny. They determine your areas of opportunity. The key is to direct your effort toward areas that both excite you and match your natural skills, to align your ambition with your ability. The obvious question is, how do I figure out where the odds are in my favor? How do I identify the opportunities and habits that are right for me? The first place we will look for an answer is by understanding your personality. How your personality influences your habits. Your genes are operating beneath the surface of every habit. Your unique cluster of genetic traits predispose you to a particular personality. Your personality is the set of characteristics that is consistent from situation to situation. The most proven scientific analysis of personality traits is known as the Big Five, which breaks them down into 5 spectrums of behavior. 1. Openness to experience, from curious and inventive on one end to cautious and consistent on the other. 2. Conscientiousness, organized and efficient to easygoing and spontaneous. 3. Extroversion, outgoing and energetic to solitary and reserved, extroverts versus introverts. 4. Agreeableness, friendly and compassionate to challenging and detached. 5. Neuroticism, anxious and sensitive to confident, calm, and stable. All 5 characteristics have biological underpinnings. Extroversion, for instance, can be tracked from birth. Our habits are not solely determined by our personalities, but there is no doubt that our genes nudge us in a certain direction. Our deeply rooted preferences make certain behaviors easier for some people than for others. The takeaway is that you should build habits that work for your personality. You don't have to build the habits everyone tells you to build. Choose the habit that best suits you, not the one that is most popular. There is a version of every habit that can bring you joy and satisfaction. Find it. Habits need to be enjoyable if they're going to stick. This is the core idea behind the 4th law. How to find a game where the odds are in your favor. Learning to play a game where the odds are in your favor is critical for maintaining motivation and feeling successful. In theory, you can enjoy almost anything. In practice, you are more likely to enjoy the things that come easily to you. People who are talented in a particular area tend to be more competent at that task and are then praised for doing a good job. They stay energized because they are making progress where others have failed, and because they get rewarded with better pay and bigger opportunities, which not only makes them happier, but also propels them to produce even higher quality work. It's a virtuous cycle. Pick the right habit, and progress is easy. Pick the wrong habit, and life is a struggle. How do you pick the right habit? The first step is something that was covered in the 3rd law. Make it easy. In many cases, when people pick the wrong habit, it simply means they picked a habit that was too difficult. When a habit is easy, you're more likely to be successful. When you are successful, you're more likely to feel satisfied. However, there is another level to consider. In the long run, if you continue to advance and improve, any area can become challenging. At some point, you need to make sure you're playing the right game for your skill set. How do you figure that out? The most common approach is trial and error. Of course, there's a problem with this strategy. Life is short. You don't have time to try every career, date every eligible bachelor, or play every musical instrument. Thankfully, there is an effective way to manage this conundrum, and it is known as the explore/exploit trade-off. In the beginning of a new activity, there should be a period of exploration. In business, it's called split testing. The goal is to try out many possibilities, research a broad range of ideas, and cast a wide net. After this initial period of exploration, shift your focus to the best solution you've found, but keep experimenting occasionally. The proper balance depends on whether you're winning or losing. If you are currently winning, you exploit, exploit, exploit. If you are currently losing, you continue to explore, explore, explore. In the long run, it is probably most effective to work on the strategy that seems to deliver the best results about 80 to 90% of the time and keep exploring with the remaining 10 to 20%. The optimal approach also depends on how much time you have. If you have a lot of time, like someone at the beginning of their career, it makes more sense to explore. If you're pressed for time, say, as you come up on the deadline for a project, you should implement the best solution you've found so far and get some results. As you explore different options, there are a series of questions you can ask yourself to continually narrow in on the habits and areas that will be most satisfying to you. What feels like fun to me, but work to others? As the author explains, the mark of whether you are made for a task is not whether you love it, but whether you can handle the pain of the task easier than most people. The work that hurts you less than it hurts others is the work you were made to do. What makes me lose track of time? Flow is the mental state you enter when you are so focused on the task at hand that the rest of the world fades away. Where do I get greater returns than the average person? We are continually comparing ourselves to those around us, and a behavior is more likely to be satisfying when the comparison is in our favor. What comes naturally to me? For just a moment, ignore what you have been taught. Ignore what society has told you. Ignore what others expect of you. Look inside yourself and ask, what feels natural to me? When have I felt alive? When have I felt like the real me? We all have limited time on this planet, and the truly great among us are the ones who not only work hard but also have the good fortune to be exposed to opportunities that favor us. As he wrote, if you can't find a game where the odds are stacked in your favor, create one. Everyone has at least a few areas in which they could be in the top 25% with some effort. When you can't win by being better, you can win by being different. Specialization is a powerful way to overcome the accident of bad genetics. The more you master a specific skill, the harder it becomes for others to compete with you. Even if you're not the most naturally gifted, you can often win by being the best in a very narrow category. As he noted, boiling water will soften a potato, but harden an egg. You can't control whether you're a potato or an egg, but you can decide to play a game where it's better to be hard or soft. How to get the most out of your genes. Our genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it. They tell us what to work hard on. And until you work as hard as those you admire, don't explain away their success as luck. Chapter 19. The Goldilocks Rule. How to stay motivated in life and work. How do we design habits that pull us in rather than ones that fade away? The way to maintain motivation and achieve peak levels of desire is to work on tasks of just manageable difficulty. The human brain loves a challenge, but only if it is within an optimal zone of difficulty. This is a challenge of just manageable difficulty, and it is a prime example of the Goldilocks Rule. The Goldilocks Rule states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. When you're starting a new habit, it's important to keep the behavior as easy as possible so you can stick with it even when conditions aren't perfect. Once a habit has been established, however, it's important to continue to advance in small ways. These little improvements and new challenges keep you engaged. And if you hit the Goldilocks zone just right, you can achieve a flow state. Improvement requires a delicate balance. You need to regularly search for challenges that push you to your edge while continuing to make enough progress to stay motivated. How to stay focused when you get bored working on your goals. As he wrote, at some point it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over and over. Mastery requires practice, but the more you practice something, the more boring and routine it becomes. Once the beginner gains have been made and we learn what to expect, our interest starts to fade. It's easy to rationalize taking a day off because you're in a good place. The greatest threat to success is not failure but boredom. We get bored with habits because they stop delighting us. The outcome becomes expected. This is why many of the most habit-forming products are those that provide continuous forms of novelty. Video games provide visual novelty. Porn provides sexual novelty. In psychology, this is known as a variable reward. The sweet spot of desire occurs at a 50-50 split between success and failure. Half of the time you get what you want. Half of the time you don't. You need just enough winning to experience satisfaction and just enough wanting to experience desire. This is one of the benefits of following the Goldilocks Rule. If you're already interested in a habit, working on challenges of just manageable difficulty is a good way to keep things interesting. Variable rewards or not, no habit will stay interesting forever. At some point, everyone faces the same challenge on the journey of self-improvement. You have to fall in love with boredom. We all have goals that we would like to achieve and dreams that we would like to fulfill, but it doesn't matter what you're trying to become better at. If you only do the work when it's convenient or exciting, then you'll never be consistent enough to achieve remarkable results. When a habit is truly important to you, you have to be willing to stick to it in any mood. Professionals take action even when the mood isn't right. They might not enjoy it, but they find a way to put the reps in. The only way to become excellent is to be endlessly fascinated by doing the same thing over and over. You have to fall in love with boredom. Chapter 20. The downside of creating good habits. The benefits of habits come at a cost. At first, each repetition develops fluency, speed, and skill. But then, as a habit becomes automatic, you become less sensitive to feedback. You fall into mindless repetition. It becomes easier to let mistakes slide. When you can do it good enough on autopilot, you stop thinking about how to do it better. The upside of habits is that we can do things without thinking. The downside of habits is that you get used to doing things a certain way and stop paying attention to little errors. You assume you're getting better because you're gaining experience. In reality, you are merely reinforcing your current habits, not improving them. In fact, some research has shown that once a skill has been mastered, there is usually a slight decline in performance over time. When you want to maximize your potential and achieve elite levels of performance, you need a more nuanced approach. You can't repeat the same things blindly and expect to become exceptional. Habits are necessary, but not sufficient for mastery. What you need is a combination of automatic habits and deliberate practice. Habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery. To become great, certain skills do need to become automatic. Mastery is the process of narrowing your focus to a tiny element of success. Mastering one habit. Although habits are powerful, what you need is a way to remain conscious of your performance over time, so you can continue to refine and improve. It is precisely at the moment when you begin to feel like you have mastered a skill that you must avoid slipping into the trap of complacency. The solution? Establish a system for reflection and review. How to review your habits and make adjustments. Reflection and review enables the long-term improvement of all habits. Without reflection, we can make excuses, create rationalizations, and lie to ourselves. Without review, we have no process for determining whether we are performing better or worse compared to yesterday. Improvement is not just about learning habits, it's also about fine-tuning them. Reflection and review ensures that you spend your time on the right things and make corrections whenever necessary. Reflection and review offers an ideal time to revisit one of the most important aspects of behavior change: identity. How to break the beliefs that hold you back. In the beginning, repeating a habit is essential to build up evidence of your desired identity. As you latch on to that new identity, however, those same beliefs can hold you back from the next level of growth. When working against you, your identity creates a kind of pride that encourages you to deny your weak spots and prevents you from truly growing. This is one of the greatest downsides of building habits. The more deeply an idea is tied to our identity, the more strongly we will defend it against criticism. One solution is to avoid making any single aspect of your identity an overwhelming portion of who you are. The more you let a single belief define you, the less capable you are of adapting when life challenges you. When you cling too tightly to one identity, you become brittle. Lose that one thing, and you lose yourself. The key to mitigating these losses of identity is to redefine yourself such that you get to keep important aspects of your identity even if your particular role changes. I'm an athlete becomes I'm the type of person who is mentally tough and loves a physical challenge. Life is constantly changing, so you need to periodically check in to see if your old habits and beliefs are still serving you. As he wrote, a lack of self-awareness is poison. Reflection and review is the antidote. Conclusion. The secret to results that last. Can one tiny change transform your life? It's unlikely you would say so. But what if you made another? And another? At some point, you will have to admit that your life was transformed by one small change. The holy grail of habit change is not a single 1% improvement, but 1,000 of them. It's a bunch of atomic habits stacking up, each one a fundamental unit of the overall system that will change your life. With the 4 laws of behavior change, you have a set of tools and strategies that you can use to build better systems and shape better habits. As he emphasized, small habits don't add up. They compound. That's the power of atomic habits. Tiny changes, remarkable results.